I'm Lauren Hernandez, and this is my project for the Urban Bird Project class. It's a history of Helotes, which is a town about 10 minutes outside of San Antonio. And unless otherwise specified, all photos in this presentation are my own because they show my personal connection to the land I'm studying. So why Helotes? I've grown up in the same house my entire life, and I live about 10 minutes away from Old Town Helotes. The community here has always seemed exclusive, and the people who know the history of the land are few, although they seem well versed. Also, this. What prompted me to do my own research on Helotes was an article I read in the Helotes Highlights newspaper. This article touches on the history of Helotes and seemed problematic, to say the least. The first paragraph states that Indians posed a serious and direct threat to the pioneers of the area until the mid-1870s. However, in typical pioneer spirit, parents sent their children to school refusing to be cowed by the renegades. This article was published in this month's paper, and the author of it is Cynthia Leal Massey, an author of several books and articles on the history of the area. I've looked through several of her books, even citing one in further on in my research, and I appreciate the historical work she's done for Helotes. Her information checks out, but she writes about Native Americans as if she's narrating a John Wayne movie. The history of Helotes is long, complex, and varies greatly from source to source, as can be seen above, but I'll be trying to provide a different perspective on the history that Massey documents. An article from Backroads, Texas provides a brief timeline of the area. In the 1600s, the Lipan tribe of Native Americans settled in the region. They would farm in the valley of what would become Helotes Creek, and one of the staple crops they grew was corn, or elotes, the namesake of this town. It's shocking that living near Helotes my whole life, I never knew that it was Native Americans who led to Helotes being called Helotes. There just seemed to be a general consensus that white settlers were growing the corn and founding the town. Anyways, in the early 1820s, Comanche tribes arrived at the Helotes area, and they eventually staked their claim and forced the Lipan tribe from the Helotes Creek Valley. The article explains that German and Mexican immigrants arrived to the area around this time to establish farms and ranches, which makes sense. The land I live on used to belong to a goat farmer. These settlers faced resistance from the Comanche peoples, who launched sporadic attacks against settlers in the area until the 1870s, when the Native Americans themselves would be expelled from the region. According to an NPR article where they interviewed S.C. Gwine, author of Empire of the Summer Moon, which talks all about the Comanche Empire, the Comanche were just this enormous force of nature sitting in the middle of the North American continent who determined how the West opened. Gwine goes on to say that if you go back through Comanche history, you see that they were the ones who stopped the Spanish from coming north. Here is why the West Coast and the East Coast settled before the middle of the country. Here is why there was basically a 40-year wait before you could develop the state of Texas, or before the Plain States could be developed. These quotes and the rest of the interview provide valuable insight into the role of the Comanche people and the role they played when it came to settling Helotes. And then the picture above is of the Lipan tribe, taken a few years ago by the Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, and the other one is Quanah Parker, who was the last chief of the Comanches. Going back to the timeline, in 1858, Dr. George F. Warnock built the first permanent home in Helotes, and it received a Texas Historic Landmark designation in 2010. And the Helotes Post Office was established in 1973, but Helotes didn't become a census-designated city until 1981. And this is the Helotes Post Office, which is now a bike shop located in Old Town Helotes. Farming and ranching persisted as the dominant livelihood in Helotes, and cattle drives from Bandera to San Antonio were commonplace, with Helotes being a busy stopping place for cowboys. So they'd go from Bandera to Helotes, stopping there, and then off to San Antonio. And this is another picture of regular cattle drives passing through Helotes circa 1916. According to a plaque in Old Town Helotes, according to archaeologists, human occupation of the Helotes area dates to about 7,000 years before present, when small bands of nomadic Indians who migrated seasonally in search of food and game camped in this vicinity. According to a paper published by Palo Alto College in 1998 and written by Michael R. Causey, according to the New Texas Handbook, 1996, Helotes was settled by Mexicans around 1856. These settlers intermarried with Apaches in the area and included a man named Chaka, who is said to be the first to build a house, the first to cultivate corn there, and the possible origin for the name Helotes, which translates to green roasting ear of corn. This information is disputed by multiple sources. The Handbook of Texas from 1952 translates Helotes as green maize. According to this source, an old cowboy saw the historical marker outside of the Guger home, now Helotes Bicycle, and also the post office, and stopped him to say that the name Helotes has nothing to do with corn. Instead, it came from the Native American word Wahelotes, which means wild turkey. According to him, Government Canyon was previously known as Wahelotes Canyon. Kazi states that this explanation is given some plausibility beyond that normally granted to anonymous old cowboys by the fact that Government Canyon is even now widely known for its large wild turkey flocks. Causey further states that the view that a man named Chaka is a figure in Helotes history, or that Mexicans had not settled the area before 1856, is regarded with amusement by local amateur historians, who are quick to explain that the Menchaca family lives off of Scenic Loop Road in Gray Forest, which was once part of Helotes, that the family includes Apache Indians and can easily trace its arrival in Helotes back to predate the first land sales. Massey further explains this in her book, Helotes, Where the Hill Country Begins, saying that Chaka is short for Menchaca, and Francisco Menchaca, who settled in the area in the 1850s, was part Spanish from the Canary Islands and part Cherokee. Speaking from my own experience, I share ancestry with the Menchacas and the Madlas, who are their cousins. My cousin, Peyton Madla, explained that his extended Menchaca family embraces their Native American heritage, and many do not view Helotes as their community. These are some pictures of the Menchaca family from the 1800s, and then that's a picture of my cousin Peyton. And then one more thing that Causey notes in 1998 is that the ecology of Helotes does not have such a bright future. The Edwards and Glenrose aquifer have already been impacted by development, wells have dropped or run dry where golf courses have started extensive pumping, test wells that were previously pristine have started showing hits when tested for industrial pollutants. The water is still within standards for potable water, but is not what it used to be. More intensive use of the land will not improve this situation. Although the statement is written subjectively, 25 years later I still have to agree with him. The houses outside Old Town Helotes run off of well water, specifically in the San Geronimo Valley, where developments are not allowed city water. I talked to 4 different families whose wells have run dry or are about to, and these people collectively agree that it is because the aquifer is low due to the increased development and in San Antonio and on the city's outskirts. One couple who lives in a house they inherited off of Bandera Road explained that it just sucks. There's all this development, and we don't have city water, and now our well is dry because all these new houses are using water from the aquifer. I can't help but blame the developers because now we can't cook, wash dishes, shower, or do our laundry. We have to be relying on family, and this property just seems like a burden now. All in all, Helotes has so much history, too much to include in a short paper, but I hope that I was able to provide some more perspectives into the culture, history, and current ecological problems occurring in and around Helotes.